Oh, hi there. Sorry I was gone again. I was busy dealing with the whole... Look, you can't just expect me to commit to a consistent schedule and workflow for these things, right? Why should I, when even the Twin Snakes video still gets views and paints the worst first impression for anyone that comes across this channel? Anyways, I didn't have much to show for this year, but don't worry, your favorite lukewarm YouTuber is back again with another wrap-up list of what I played throughout 2022. This year I decided to try something different and do a few live streams. A few games I remembered, and a couple I jumped in blind to varying success. But one of the titles I played that stuck to me the most has been Illbleed, a Dreamcast cult classic that you've no doubt been exposed to its praises from every corner of the internet. And yeah, even that one. Being told the plot sum and all the quirks it has is hilarious, but it's on a whole nother level of appreciation once I actually played through it and got to experience it in full. Part comfy, part shocking, part hilarious, and downright surreal. Illbleed is one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences where you're utterly roped into the world it presents. Fascinated by each and every single moment-to-moment event, wondering if what's around the corner will be more absurd or horrifying than the last, while gorging on the set dressing and atmosphere each scenario presents. Not unlike a weird haunted house ride where each room is noticeably grimy and shoddily put together and makes no real sense, but you're having such a good time you don't even care if the costume guy smothers you in pig shit. By the end, I was left with an unforgettable experience that, despite all of its flaws, manages to still be a masterpiece of a game, and a must play for anyone, not just horror buffs or Dreamcast fetishists. This year, the beat-em-up GOAT came back with a throwback that not only manages to deliver, but excel on pretty much every single plane of design for a beat-em-up that it honestly feels like a paradigm shift. Shredder's Revenge is, no joke, the best beat-em-up of all time, and while discourse between this and Streets of Rage 4 always gets heated, you can't deny just how much this game does to push the genre forward. While on the surface it seems like basic quality of life features of prolonged combo chains, EX moves, hit stopping, a devil trigger function, cancelable attacks and movement, co-op special moves, and the list goes on. It all manages to create such an unbelievably smooth and dynamic flow to combat, unlike any current beat-em-up on the market. For as many times as I played Streets of Rage 4 to death, I never found myself going crazy over labbing combos like I did with this game. It's a testament to the game when I managed to grab a full party of people unfamiliar with beat-em-ups and having it immediately click for all of them. No weird hitboxes where you have to align yourself exactly with an enemy, or stuns and knockdowns that leave you on the ground waiting for seconds at a time. The way this game feels so tight and responsive is a framework that's invaluable to the genre moving forward. And that's not even mentioning the smooth pixel art animation and the banger OST that accompanies it. There's a lot of Easter eggs and fan service for people that grew up with the cartoons too, but I don't really care because I'm not a decrepit 45-year-old. Shredder's Revenge is the pinnacle of the beat-em-up genre and an absolute must-play. And as a side note, I also highly encourage you to check out the publisher-developer joint's other games, as they seem to be a goldmine for retro throwbacks that manage to go above and beyond their inspirations. Well, I can't really talk shit about Rise now that Capcom managed to deliver with the Sunbreak expansion, traveling to what might be the comfiest hub in the series with the best NPC of all time by the docks, and some random sword and shield bitch with a fat ass. Sunbreak delivers on the promise of harder and more spectacular monsters to fight, this time drawing from a lot of 2nd and 4th gen classics, alongside the return of the jungle with the added verticality that, while amazing, really makes me wish this game wasn't tied to the Switch at points. Regardless, its new set of monsters and mechanics like the scroll switching for each weapon type finally provides a sense of challenge and depth that the game was sorely missing at launch. Being able to spin wildly in the air with a pair of dual blades or buffing your hammer to 3 times its power into a weapon of mass destruction encapsulates the chaotic energy of this new era of portable games with lots of flair. Now granted, this really isn't the direction I want mainline games to head in, but for what it's worth, as another celebration and stopgap for the Monster Hunter series between the big releases, it could be a lot worse. Like how dog shit the post-launch content for this game is. Now, I already talked about this game in length previously, and just to clarify, I wasn't really irony posting when I said that Strangers is one of the best character action games I've ever played. Revisiting the Chaos mode before jumping into the DLC just further solidified how diverse and seemingly limitless Strangers combat can be at times. The fusion of job classes with weapon loadouts and transferable skills in between will always keep you busy optimizing the best buffs, spells, and combos to use at any given time, while the seamlessness of jumping between all of them lets it flow like Monster Energy. You know, the ones that aren't gay. And while the writing is weak, the overall narrative and presentation gives it an edge like no other, while appealing to all kinds of die-hard Final Fantasy fans. You know, the ones that aren't gay. Look, I saw this game at Walmart for $10 yesterday, so stop wasting your time and fucking play it. Hey yo, that Top Gun movie was sick. I'm in the mood for some Ace Combat. Let me check out AC3, it's the only one I haven't beaten yet. all the Ace Combat series, it's known for its sense of lifting spirits during the darkest moments of conflict, with a grand presentation and moving narratives of underdogs triumphing and bringing nations to victory, all striving for peace. Ace Combat 3 stands out as the one that refuses to believe in any of this, and it drags you into the darkest aspects of human nature and just how easy it is to spiral into madness once the military-industrial complex manages to technologically surpass its creators and tap into everything we held sacred. It's sharp, it's heavy, it's also kinda slow. It manages to iterate on the customizability and cinematic flair too established, while also introducing a narrative with its own realized cast and branching paths that severely change the outcome of the story, avoiding a one-and-done playthrough. It's impressive how the team managed to create one of the most enthralling narratives in the series with its debut. It's definitely a style and direction that the series has never returned for very obvious reasons, turning it into a really standout experience over time. It's a must-play for any Ace Combat fans or anyone remotely interested in its dystopic themes and setting. Just, be prepared for an existential one-on-one by the time it's over. And speaking of existential experiences, I got into a real shmup binge this year, sifting through the sordid history of the genres and the subgenres within, all dating back to the 70s. I managed to complete Gunbird on stream, and the humiliation was so severe I never came back to the idea.
Fuck up.
That didn't stop me from marathoning series like Darius, and quite frankly, the first couple of ones are pretty shit. Though it wasn't until I got to Darius Gaiden that I felt like I really understood all the hype behind these games. It has a solid sense of style, with its biomechanical art style fully realized with layered and detailed pixel art, creating these abomination gauntlet of bosses, accompanied by the earworm of a soundtrack fusing jazz, synth-pop, and some choir to create a vibe that was absolutely captivating. It's still a grueling and unforgiving game as shmup goes, but the sense of both tension and elation I was feeling through its expertly balanced pacing and difficulty curve had me playing it for months. And then once I was done, I moved on to the game that followed it up, and the jump was just fucking incredible. You can't blame Taito for flexing this hard with G Darius, especially when they fucking served such a raw shmup with its early 3D style still managing to hold up and provide such a spectacle of sweeping landscapes and huge fish monsters. And it's unmistakably primitive with how blocky and cardboardy everything looks, but to me it gives a zen presentation as a puppet show with elaborate props and set dressing. And the music, oh man, the music. The band of composers decided to elaborate more on that hint of ethereal sound in Gaiden to create a soundtrack that feels like a captivating out-of-body experience when heard with or without the game's context. Lots of droning industrial and moments of tension to generate despair, chanting choirs to accentuate the sense of horror against all the looming threats, a heavy focus on synths and electronica for that touch of sci-fi edge, and after surviving it all and being on the cusp of triumph, you get a fusion of all three creating a moving arrangement. This is all amped with how it's handled in-game as it fades in and out and halts at certain moments to bring them to life. I'm sorry Einhander, but G Darius felt like such a religious experience playing through it that it's hands down the best shmup on the PS1. I got a PS5. Please don't ask me if it was worth it or I'll smash your face with it. I got to play Rift Apart, and while it's one of the best Ratchet & Clank games, finally innovating on a tired formula and presenting a narrative that didn't feel like mindless dribble following cinematic trends, mostly, it's still really apparent just how tough it is to break the mold established by the games before it. So I went back and replayed a large chunk of them, and it's really hard to understate just how close to perfection a game like Going Commando is. It's up there with Sly 2 and MGS 2 as a sequel that presents such a massive leap and ended up casting a shadow on the rest of the series. And it's not like it wasn't earned. The combat is tweaked significantly with more responsive controls, better platforming segments, more varied locations, and a progression system that feels like fucking crack. It then goes the extra mile by adding varied gameplay styles and minigames that would become series staples. Not all of it is perfect, obviously, but the pacing manages to be steady enough to never detract from any of it. The sense of humor and biting satire is still there, and man, do I really fucking miss it. I was absolutely blindsided by how this game manages to hold up on every front, though I can't help but feel sad at how every game that followed it managed to be worse and pretty good, and worse, and...
Hey yo, I'm Blue Rhapsody, and I occasionally play games. Here are some of the ones I liked last year. One Step to Eden is a roguelike RPG that plays exactly like a Battle Network game mixed with the unpredictability of Binding of Isaac. The grid-like combat is exhilarating as it is challenging to aim and dodge attacks, with each time losing giving the player new spells and abilities to work with, making for a highly addicting gameplay loop of getting farther and unlocking cooler spells to help with the next run. Spells come in a wide variety and many of them synergize with each other to make some super powerful set plays. You gain a new spell and XP for every screen you clear, so it's easy to gain a lot of power to make the early game go by much faster compared to other roguelikes. Which is super nice, since I don't have to play very far to figure out whether or not a run is a bust. Spells surprisingly have a lot of depth to how they work in this game. Some spells are most effective when used in tandem with another attack or a spell. There are multiple playable characters and each one is super unique and brings a completely different playstyle to the table. As of writing this, my favorite character in the game is Terra. One Step to Eden is a refreshing take on the roguelike genre, and check it out if it looks interesting to you. It should be on the eShop of every platform that matters. FEAR stands for First Encounter Assault Recon, and it's an action horror FPS where you take control of somebody called the Point Man, a part of the aptly named FEAR unit, with orders to FUCK, which is another acronym that stands for Fuck Up, Capture, or Kill a guy named Paxton Fattel. But honestly though, who fucking cares? The story isn't why I played this game. By today's standards, the gunplay is pretty standard for an FPS made in 2006. You have grenades, shooty shoots, slowdown, and whatever the fuck these melees are. Levels range from the crack dens of Detroit, skyrise offices, to secret underground labs. And each one feels like an action movie, utilizing all it can out of the environment to create intense shootouts. The enemies, otherwise known as replicas, feel highly dynamic to play against. Replicas will use a wide variety of voice lines and tactics depending on whatever situation's happening. Very similarly to the Combine in Valve's sleeper hit game Half-Life 2. The namesake fear aspect is more of a secondary factor of the game. It doesn't really fit with the bombastic action movie shootouts and only serves to slow down the progression in a given level. None of the scares in this game are all that scary either. This game is a fucking blast to play if you're looking for intense mid-2000s shootout action.
Elden Ring, skrrr, Elden Ring, skrrr, Elden Ring. Oye, mira, bendiciones, ya tú sabes, ustedes son full.
Another year, another porn game. Sequel to Sengoku Rants, Rant's Quest is a classic dungeon crawling RPG released in 2011. It follows our titular character Rance, as he's winding down from his several conquests in the previous game. After unifying Japan, Rance decides to go back to the continent on a quest to try to unfreeze his faithful companion Syl. You might call it a Rance Quest, to get some more hoes. The quests are like mini dungeons with a main and sometimes side objectives. The gameplay is exactly like Etrian Odyssey or an older Final Fantasy game except with fucking. Just like the last game, there are a ton of characters to collect and customize your party with. Making parties in this game is super fun. There are a grillion different ways to make any character, and it's really up to you and how you want to make each one play. Every time a character levels up, they get a skill point to put in whatever you want them to learn, meaning that you can make a black mage tank, or a summoner swordswoman, or whatever you really want. Pretty early on, Rance does some of his usual shenanigans and gets cursed. This is a special curse that only allows him to fuck women level 35 or above. This curse though has a secondary effect. Anybody aged by Rance will go back to level 1, except they'll keep all their stats and skills. Think of it sort of like a COD prestige, allowing you to gig above character stats to insane levels. Rance Quest is perfectly suited to be played in short bursts similar to a DS game. The quests are generally not that long, with dungeons usually only being a few floors with the occasional puzzle or secret path. Just like the last game, the writing, if you can get past the porn part, is very comedic in tone and probably the best part of the game. Check it out on mangagamer.com if it looks interesting to you. Thanks for having me.
And before we move on to last pick, it's time for the Mittest Games of the Year. Sonic Frontiers is really fucking good, but not good enough. It's a really disjointed experience between the narrative that feels like it takes place in a vacuum, the open world segments that, while really fun to explore and traverse, clash heavily with the general Sonic art style, coupled more by the cyberspace stages that are frankly hot dog shit. You have Sonic controlling stiffer than my dick down Jenna Ortega's throat, shameless fucking level design copied one-to-one with people huffing copium thinking it's a homage, and I hope you like Green Hill, a chemical plant in Houston, Texas, because that's all they made for this game. Look, I love this game, but I just really want to see this framework taken into a fully realized game next time. Remember when I told everyone not to skip on Neon White? Well, that's only half true. Literally half of this game is worse than Danganronpa with how insufferable both characters and voice acting can be. No amount of coon bait in the world can justify characters like Violet and Yellow existing and never shutting the fuck up trying to sound like they're 16. The platforming and combat and even the soundtrack is still solid and addictive. I just desperately wish it could be split off from the rest of this game. Signalis carries with it an immaculate presentation and atmosphere that unfortunately stalls and collapses under its own weight, relying heavily on elements from games like Silent Hill to carry it, with a cumbersome second half focused on combat that feels underdeveloped intentionally under the guise of survival horror combat being shit on purpose. It's true, but Silent Hill never had you in a room of 8 fucking enemies while you struggle to pick up ammo. I still highly recommend it because I think it's worth experiencing, but I don't blame you if you end up feeling sour about it or dropping it near the end. Triangle strategy is a return to form to the classic SRPG formula of games like Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics. But while those games had the rawest writing ever put on a disc with desperate conflicts and profound character development that universally resonates with anyone that played it, Triangle strategy has ambient. And not even the fun amount. Just the right amount that puts you to sleep, but prolonged enough that it feels like it never ends. Grinding each encounter to a halt with hours and hours and hours and hours of dialogue that, yes, you can skip, but at that point you're going to be entirely lost in beating the game in 10 hours. From beginning to end, Xeno 3 offers a profound and breathtaking experience as you delve deeper into the intricately crafted world and slowly chip away at its core with an incredibly charming cast of characters. Not you. You have a brand new, fully realized open world to explore, with every inch providing new key quests, towns, upgrades, bosses, and sometimes something as simple as a vantage point with an incredible view. And I really can't tell you the last time I unironically sat my ass down just to look at a mountainside and take it all in. Exploring lets you familiarize yourself with a streamlined combat system that simplifies equipment loadouts and classes for the better, while the UI provides enough feedback to always let you know what you're doing. The sense of scale is greater than ever as you fight these giant bosses taking the form of giant demons, as you literally and figuratively tear the world apart. And yet, its best strength all lies in the compact, existential narrative and themes that evoke the sense of introspection I didn't know I had in me. And that's on top of questioning and reiterating on the themes of the first two games, while calling back and eerily mirroring the narrative of Xenogears as both a homage and a do-over of a lot of beats that the game first planted years ago. And while yes, it is a title that can be played blindly without any previous experience, it feels like a much more complete and transformative work as someone that's played through the entire Xeno franchise, as it celebrates its lineage without ever relying on directly calling back outside of its own continuity. This is the first RPG I've clocked nearly 200 hours in, and every time I think about going back to it, it generally feels heart-wrenching that I'll never get to experience it all over again. So yeah, play it, it's good.